The playoff salary cap will be introduced this year. How will it impact the Maple Leafs? I'll explain on today's edition of the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Locked On Leafs podcast, the daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast hosted by myself, Mike DiStefano, and my co-host, Dave Morassutti. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is around the corner. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now. Just finished up my fourth and final fantasy football draft earlier today. Dave, you in any drafts this year?
I got my fourth one tomorrow.
So you're also in.
Or actually today, technically.
Yes, on Wednesday. Yeah, we both of us in 4 leagues. Yeah, look at us go. We got to get that Locked On Leafs fantasy league up and running for hockey fantasy again this season. What, year 3 for the league this year? Hopefully we can expand it a little bit. Let us know in the Discord, or you can let us know down below in the chat, in the comments, if you're interested in joining the Locked On Leafs hockey fantasy league. Would love some new blood over going into the new season. So you can let us know down below if that's something that you'd be interested in. What's going on, Dave? How you feeling today, pal?
Feeling pretty good. You know, it looks like some of the hockey reporters are coming out of hibernation.
Yeah. Right after Labor Day, everyone kind of hits the pavement and it's go time. They're ready to go. And you heard a bunch of them kind of on, the various sport networks, whether it's TSN or Sportsnet, writing for The Athletic, putting out their own podcasts. Lots more hockey discourse today and yesterday than there had been in the previous 2 months of the summer. But one of the big kind of newsy topics, which we're going to talk about today, it sounds like the NHL is getting ready to implement a playoff salary cap this season. It was something that was agreed upon in the new CBA that was signed, but the CBA doesn't necessarily kick in until next year. But apparently there's a few things within the CBA that they have collectively bargained to begin immediately. And the playoff salary cap is one of those things. Does that surprise you, Dave?
A little bit. I would have thought something like that. They would give at least a year.
Yeah.
For teams to kind of get themselves a comment. No. And also, like, your CBA doesn't technically start until next year anyway. So, like, I'm kind of surprised that they, put themselves in a position where they want a postseason salary cap starting in the 2026 postseason.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that I am surprised that they wouldn't have given teams a little bit more of a runway, so that maybe possibly they did alert the GM saying, hey, by the way, this is not announced yet. It's not formalized, but we're hoping that a playoff salary cap will be implemented. We can agree to that officially, and it can be in place for this year's playoffs. So keep that in mind in the back of your heads, just in case when you're going about your off season. Obviously it sounds like this is going to happen. This is what's being reported by all the insiders right now. I don't think there was an official statement from the league just yet, just as of now considered a quote unquote report. But usually when everyone's reporting it, it does mean that it's going to come into effect. But like, what does this mean? Basically, that's the question that maybe people are asking. Like, what do you mean playoff salary cap? What are you talking about? And essentially it's just like a regular season now. The playoff salary cap, every team's going to have $95 million in playoff salaries that they can dress. Now that's the one difference. It is a playoff. It has to be cap eligible. Just your dressed roster has to be cap eligible. So you can have, a couple extras on your roster. You can have those extra skaters that don't count against the cap. But every roster that is active and dresses in a playoff game must be cap compliant. Unlike previous years where we've seen situations where teams have taken advantage of the salary cap loopholes and they've rested guys down the stretch who are quote unquote hurt, but miraculously we're ready to go for game 1 of the season. And all the while they're able to make some trades to beef up their team. You look at last year with the Florida Panthers, right? Aaron Ekblad is out, and then all of a sudden Matt Tkachuk was out and placed on LTIR. That opened up a lot of cap space for them to go out and get Seth Jones and Brad Marchand. Going forward, that might not be a possibility for teams because every team is going to have to be cap compliant. But what I thought was very interesting, Dave, was that unlike the regular season, where when you make additions at the deadline, you can accrue cap space and gain more of it. That's not a thing in the playoffs. I don't know if you knew that, but when I was reading into this, when I saw the report, and I read this paragraph here, under the new playoff salary cap, however, players' full season salaries will be used to calculate if a team is cap compliant in the postseason, even if they're only on the books for a small portion of the team. So essentially, cap accrual doesn't mean nearly as much as it used to, which, of course, the 1 year the Maple Leafs can accrue cap, they're not going to really be able to utilize it to the full extent because, well, they still will have to be cap compliant come puck drop of the regular season.
Yeah.
Playoffs, rather, for the playoffs.
Yeah, that's like, we hear, like, this is the thing with the salary cap has become it kind of turns people a little off because it's just like, oh, you have cap space. Well, guess what? You could actually accrue more cap space. Well, like how? Like how does it like the whole calculation? I know there's a lot of people that are able to quickly realize and understand it, but like if you're looking at the casual fan that just wants to know what can my team do, and now it's just like what you thought your team could do to what they can do now, throw that out the window. And yeah, it's so funny because I hear so many fans, especially last year, the biggest complaint wasn't that Florida was over the cap. What was the retort we kind of always got? Well, why didn't the Leafs do the same thing?
Yes, with Austin Matthews.
Yeah.
That was a conversation that was definitely had as well. Whereas, they did it with Matt Tkachuk. Why didn't the Maple Leafs do this for Austin Matthews? And previously it's been done. Mark Stone did it with Vegas the year that they had won the cup, right? Nikita Kucherov did it the the 1 year that Tampa won the cup. And years ago, Patrick Kane was kind of the first guy who did it when he was a member of the Chicago Blackhawks. Guess what they did, Dave? Oh, they went on to win the Stanley Cup. So this has been proven to be an effective tactic, and the Maple Leafs opted not to do it. And clearly, like Matthews, he could have played. He did play, obviously. He was hurt, but he played, and he did his best. And there's a good chance that Tkachuk could have played. There's a good chance that years ago Kucherov could have played at some point, game 79, 80, 81, or 82. But instead, they put him on LTIR, and then once they got to the playoffs, activate him, and it doesn't matter anymore. Remember the famous T-shirts where it was like, I don't know, $91 million in cap or something like that? It was like $13 million over the cap was like a T-shirt that they had made because then Carolina was complaining that they couldn't compete with a cap team or a team that was so far over the cap or something like that. So that's not going to be a thing anymore, essentially, is what we're getting at. Every single team will have to be cap compliant come playoffs, and they're using the full season's cap, so they have full year AAV. So cap accrual not necessarily going to be an overutilized thing like it had been in the past, which I think that's the part where I find it weird that they didn't give them more of a runway in that regards. Because if you're a team like the Leafs where you're hoping, we'll go into the season with some cap space, we can accrue more, and then we can make a big ad at the deadline. Now all of a sudden it's like, well, if we make that ad, it's like it's still going to have to be within the cap compliance of the start of the regular season, not the accrued cap space, which is definitely changes things.
Yeah, just it moves the goalpost once again. Because
it makes it harder. Makes it hard to trade and to make big moves. Absolutely, it does.
It does. And like, what do you want if I'm the NHL, you look at your other I'll put the NBA and I'll put the MLB in there because NFL, it's harder to make deals. in the NFL during in season. When you look at the NBA and MLB, how much movement happens in season, right? Especially in the NBA. It's because there isn't this idea of, we got to stick to a budget, and now we're going to hold teams to that for the first time in a really long, in a long time, because how many years we talked about how many teams were over the salary cap. The NHL was fine with it up until this year. It actually does the kind of, and I was talking with some colleagues about this, now it kind of takes away from that potential excitement of, I'm sure a lot of Panthers fans were excited that they went and they got Marchand and they got Seth Jones.
Yeah.
Because in that trade deadline, we were kind of like, okay, there's some okay moves. Then the Brad Marchand move happened, and it's just like, holy crap, right? The reaction of every single person that saw that trade, because you saw a big move. But then you have a lot of teams like, yeah, we would love to make a big move, but salary cap doesn't allow for it. Other than some GMs don't want to trade assets, right? And they want to hold on to these assets. That's a whole other story. But like majority of the time you hear just, couldn't get a deal done because it couldn't make the money work. And now one of the ways that teams thought they could actually do it is being taken away. It's just like, it just makes these trade deadlines less compelling. And I'm a person that writes about trade deadlines, and I'm covering deadlines. And I always say, like, I don't get my hopes up very high when those seasons come around, just because I know that the salary cap just makes it that much tougher to do those sort of deals that everybody would like to see.
Right? It is funny. Like always the topic of conversation around the NHL is like the hard cap system has killed the league and killed momentum and killed the offseason, getting killed in-season trades and blockbuster trades. The hard cap system, although it's created parity, which I will, credit Gary Bettman for that. It does seem like there is parity and turnover every, 5, 6, 7 years within the league. Sure, that's if that was your goal, it's been accomplished. But it's also kind of made your league stale in terms of player movement. Like the NFL, the NBA is insane. The way that the NBA can move around money, it's wild. And why? Because they have a soft cap system, right? It's the way it is. Like MLB, there's no salary cap, so they can go out and make big trades and add big time players to their team no matter what. You go and you look at the NFL, like they can restructure contracts, they can cut players, only the guaranteed money actually counts. They can trade, like it just creates a lot more flexibility. The NHL, once that contract signed, like that's it. Like that's where we're at. And there's no releasing guys midseason to get rid of it. You can waive them, I guess, but still only a portion of it can be waived. 1.15 million of it can be waived. The rest will still be on your against your cap. So it's going to be interesting to see how this changes things moving forward. I guess this would benefit teams though that are hit pretty hard by like cap recapture penalties, because that cap would not go against the daily lineup because they're not in your lineup come playoff time. So that's one thing. So teams that have a couple of players who've been bought out, that cap, I guess, won't go against the playoff cap. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. I'm not sure why they decided to rush this and implement it right away. It does feel like it's something that maybe they could have given a full off season to allow teams to prepare for that, as opposed to kind of dropping it in here after the off season kind of already unfolded. But neither you or I are Gary Bettman. We don't make the decisions. He gets paid very handsomely to make the wrong decisions all the time. Who are we? Who are we to argue with old Jerry Bettman there? All right, on the other side, the Maple Leafs and Dennis Hildeby come to an agreement on a long-term deal. What does that mean? And could a PTO be in the cards shortly? We'll get to that and more next in the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
Today's edition of the Locked On Leafs podcast is brought to you by Monarch Money. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. When you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you've put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visually, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. And that's a big one there. You know, if you feel like you're not saving as much as you think you should, Monarch can help you find inefficient investments that you're making are, things you don't need, like subscriptions that you're paying more than you should. Go and check out Monarch because you don't want to let financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNHL.
Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. Mike DiStefano, Dave Morassutti with you as we are each and every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, soon to be 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, in a couple of weeks here once training camp kicks off. You can find us free and available wherever you get your podcasts and also up on YouTube as well. All right. So, the playoff salary cap is now being implemented in 2026. There's a couple other things, too, that will immediately be implemented this season that is part of the upcoming CBA. The no deferred compensation in contracts will no longer be allowed. No double salary retention in trades. That's another one that is going to be implemented. And this is another one that could impact the trade deadline. Like the double salary retention was huge. Like that was a huge way for teams to try and get players to fit them under the cap. But I guess kind of makes sense that if you need double salary retention to get a player, there's a good chance that that player will no longer be eligible for your team's cap come playoff time anyways, if you're that up against it. So I suppose it makes sense with the new cap rule in the playoffs, but it does kind of stink to know that that loophole is kind of is being closed by the league.
Yeah, we saw the Leafs do it a few times. I think Nick Foligno was one of those players that they did the
Ryan O'Reilly. Ryan O'Reilly was a double retention guy. I think they took on some cap space in a couple of deals.
Robin Lehner, I think, was one of them.
Yeah. So like teams were using it. Like if teams had cap space, they used it to like basically buy a draft pick. So I guess that's no longer gonna be possible. So that's kind of interesting that they're closing that loophole. And also the player dress code mandate is being
yes, we got to get to the real issues here.
Oh yeah, we can't go another year with these guys having to wear suits. Gotta let them, be themselves and wear whatever makes them comfortable showing up to the rink. That has to be immediately addressed. Absolutely. And apparently there was a rule in the CBA that prevented players from endorsing wine and spirits. Did you know this? I did not realize that, but apparently that is being taken out of the newest CBA, and that's something also that will immediately be available to players. So not only are they able to endorse gambling, but they can now also endorse wine and spirits as well.
I thought that was changing. I thought especially certain provinces, we live in Ontario. I thought Ontario was supposed to ban celebrities and athletes from being used in gambling ads.
Yeah, I thought I had read something about that too, but we see Austin Matthews in those Bet99 ads all the time.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
McDavid is doing the which one is he? He's doing BetMGM.
I think so. Yeah,
him and Gretzky were doing it.
Gretzky's doing BetMGM, like GSP's Bet99. There's a lot of guys and athletes that are still doing this stuff. I don't know if it was until if they got grandfathered in because they were already done. Those things were paid for. Maybe it's moving forward. No new projects could be done when it comes to athletes and betting. But it's okay. They can pivot and they could be wine connoisseurs and spirit connoisseurs instead. So not only can they promote gambling, they can promote drinking as well, which is apparently something that the NHL wants them to be in that business of. I'm not sure why, but yeah. So they're no longer preventing people, players from endorsing wines and spirits. So those are the new CBA items that will be introduced immediately. The other items within the CBA dropping from 8 to 7 year extension lengths, from 7 to 6 for UFAs. That stuff will be implemented next off season. So there are going to be some changes moving forward, a couple immediately and a couple that they're going to wait a little bit on. We'll see how that impacts the rest of the season. I'm not really quite sure how it's going to, but I think there will be some impact, especially the playoff cap and the no double retention. Those I think will actually significantly impact how teams operate this season and especially at the deadline.
It is, and we've already seen teams have to sort of adjust their game plans. I'm very curious to see how this impacts teams' abilities to make moves, right? Like at the end of the day, teams are going to want to find a way to get better. So they're not going to just be like, this is too hard, guys. I don't think we're going to be able to make these trades we want to do because of these rules. Like, no, you just have to find a better way to do your business, right?
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see how the adjustments are made to do it and the approach that teams make now. Like, we already saw in some cases where it becomes more about who's available at the deadline. Then it now becomes like, yeah, we think the team should trade for X, Y, and Z. Well, teams also have to be willing to trade X, Y, and Z because certain teams have found they still believe they have a chance to make the playoffs. And the one thing the league has always been against is expanded playoffs because they don't want. In a way, it kind of helps to not have that expanded playoffs because you can see more movement and more teams decide, yeah, we're just going to punt on the year.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll see. I do want to say, like, give like just to give an example, because I'm not sure we really actually flushed it out what it means, like accruing cap space and how this now no longer is really, not going to be a thing moving forward, because of the new changes to the CBA. But essentially, to make it real simple, the salary cap is 95 million. If your salary cap for your players was 92 million, let's say, all the way up until the salary cap, all the way up until the deadline, so you've accrued $3 million in extra cap space. So instead of the cap now for you being technically 95 million, you've accrued that space. You could tack it on because it averages out at the end of the day. It's a daily average of 95 million in cap. So whatever you've saved of that money, you can attack it so that at the end of the season, it all makes sense at 95.5 million. So basically means you'll have an extra $3 million of a cap ceiling at that point. So instead of it being 95, it would have been 98, and that would allow you to now add someone that's of a $6 million salary. It's no longer going to be the case because that accrued cap will not carry over into the playoffs. You still will have to have a $95 million team, and you're not getting them at the reduced cap hit for the 3/4 way. You're getting them at the full pop for the full cap. So that's kind of the situation there and why it's going to impact the Leafs in one team, but also everyone else in the NHL. Speaking of the Leafs, though, they made a signing, an extension of a young RFA goaltender. We'll tell you about that next here in the Locked On Leafs podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is almost here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets. to use across the app. I love using FanDuel. It fits however you want to play, whether you're looking to bet on player props, building a same game parlay, or jumping in on some live action as it all unfolds. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your favorite team or just keep an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, it's easy, and it's the best way to add a little bit of edge to your Sunday. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. The Locked On Leafs podcast continues. Mike DiStefano, Dave Morassutti with you as always. And the Maple Leafs have announced that they've extended goaltender Dennis Hildeby, the Hildebeest, if you will. It's a 3-year extension with an AAV of $840,000. It'll be a two-way deal the first 2 years of the contract, and then it converts to a one-way contract in year 3. So a little bit of a different deal. I guess you could consider that creative in a way. Do you read into the way that it's structured at all and what that could mean for the future of Dennis Hildeby?
Well, I mean, it kind of does two things. It doesn't put the pressure in terms of the Leafs' expectations on him to be a full-time NHLer, right? I mean, they got 2 goalies right now. They're going to be, I don't see Dennis Hildeby coming in and saying, I'm going to try to knock Joe Woll or Anthony Stolarz out of a job. Like, it's just the real, we know that's not going to happen. So I think it's kind of a bit of that. I know people were like having 2 years of the deal being a two-way. I don't know if that also factors into, his age and how many years he's also played. It's just one of those things where, it kind of lights a little bit of a fire under a guy like Dennis Hildeby, right? You want to be making that NHL money. You don't want to be making the AHL salary. I don't know what the deal works out to in terms of his AHL salary, because that's what the two-way part's kind of all about, right?
It's possible. I would have to go and double check, and I probably should have, but it would take me a little bit longer to figure it out. But it's possible that he still have 2 years left of waiver exemption. And then year 3, he would have to pass through waivers. And it's more likely that a team lets him slip if he's on a one-way deal with guaranteed NHL money as opposed to a two-way deal. That's the possibility as to why I think they could have structured it that way. Again, I would have to check and see how many more years of waiver exemption he has on his deal. But that is something that I know they've done in the past, and it's worked out. I believe they did the same thing with Joseph Woll a couple of years ago. Now, Woll ended up obviously becoming a really good goaltender, and they never had to send him down on waivers. But that was kind of the thought process when they made that deal originally.
So I'm just checking on Puckpedia right now. I don't believe he's still waiver exempt. He is now you can also check and see when he becomes waiver eligible, which is what I'm trying to do right now. Here we are. So I think he still has he's exempt for 3 of 4 seasons. So I think he has one more season where he is waiver exempt.
Well, that could be this year, and then next year he's also waiver exempt.
Yeah. So the way it works is that you have 4 seasons where you're waiver exempt.
Mm-hmm.
So for him, it's either 1 season or 54 NHL games. So I believe as soon as this year is done and he's on a NHL deal, he's no longer going to be waiver exempt. So this year, there's not really as much pressure for him to be a full-time NHLer, but come the second and third year of the deal, there's going to be a bit more urgency for him to show, especially if he wants to be on the Leafs.
Well, he this year the crease is locked in, right? Yeah. But moving forward, right, he'll have an opportunity to compete. If Anthony Stolarz doesn't sign an extension with the team, and they decide, okay, let's see what Hildeby has, the Hildebeest, I guess he'll have an opportunity at that point. But yeah, so we'll see what happens when it comes to Dennis Hildeby. 73 career games in the American Hockey League. He's got a 253 goals against and a 909 save percentage with 6 shutouts. He has played in 6 NHL games where he's got a 333 goals against and a 878 save percentage in those games at the NHL level. But he does like have a chance to play NHL games this year. Like as of now, is he not penciled in as the Maple Leafs number 3 goalie? Like they haven't replaced Matt Murray. They haven't brought in like that veteran, like a Michael Hutchinson type of guy. Like they have. I know. I'm sorry for that deep cut.
Michael
But they
Hutchinson,
haven't.
David Riddick.
Yeah, there's been a bunch of third goalies that they've brought in. But right now there isn't one of those on the roster. He does enter camp as the number 3 goalie on the depth chart, doesn't he?
He does, and at times I thought he was that de facto because I think at one point Matt Murray wasn't an option for them. So for him, it also because he is waiver exempt, it does kind of potentially help his positioning, depending on what they decide to do in terms of PTOs or any last minute offers for a player that's maybe looking for an opportunity to play games, a la Matt Murray. Could be interesting.
Is the e-bug implemented this year, or is that something that they're waiting till next year to bring in? The e-bug. I didn't see that in the article that I looked up. It had no mention.
I didn't see anything about the e-bug being
So like that's something that should have been addressed right away. Like that's one that you probably should have definitely addressed. No, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, because it remains the most embarrassing thing.
If they prioritize, letting these guys advertise wine and spirits and letting them wear whatever they want. Meanwhile, they'll continue to have U of T goalies play games or Zamboni drivers play real National Hockey League games. The priorities for this league sometimes really does make me shake my head. But that being said, I do wonder, like, you talk about him being the number 3 goalie on the team. I wonder if they do go to the PTO for a goalie potentially this year. Why don't we actually take why don't we take some time? So I want to take a look at the goalies who are available. So why don't we take some time? We can come back with a Friday 5-pack of 5 potential PTO goalie options for the Maple Leafs. I know there's a couple of goalies still out there. Maybe there's maybe even there's a trade that could be made around the league, but like 5 possible options where the Maple Leafs could add a depth goaltender. Sounds like a Friday 5-pack, if you ask me. But that is something that we could do in a couple of days. But any final thoughts on the Hildeby signing before we get out of here?
I mean, I know the Leafs prospect pool doesn't get a lot of love, but like I see the goalies that they have in the system. I said, if they develop right, it could become a really good position of strength that this team has not had. Remember, we talked so much about this team not being able to draft and develop a goalie. That was kind of one thing that maybe under Kyle Dubas that in the Shanahan era that kind of changed, right? That ability to go out and not having to go and spend assets to get a goalie, right? Think about the Jack Campbell trade, the David Riddick, not having to go and spend assets to go get a goalie. It'd be nice to do what other NHL teams do and develop it in-house.
Yeah, I still want to see those draft picks, have success at the NHL level.
Yep.
So although yes, Akhtiamov and Pexa and Dennis Hildeby, it's like okay, we like what they got. There's some potential here. I do want to see them actually have some success at the NHL level before I, credit Kyle Dubas and company for developing some goaltenders here. Because keep in mind, Joseph Woll was not a Dubas guy. He was drafted in 2016.
So attending a Mark Hunter
would have been like Mark Hunter, Lou Lamoriello days, technically. True. So none of these guys have yet to establish themselves in the NHL. But yes, it does look like there are some goalies in the pipeline at the very least that you could be excited about. Dennis Hildeby is at the top of the list for goalies of the pipeline. Still fairly young, just 24 years old. Big body, 6'7", 230 pounds, very athletic. We'll see what he can do and what'll be considered his second full season in North America. Yeah, coming up this year. All right, that'll do it for us here today on the podcast. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast on all platforms and receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at D_Morassutti. And follow the show as well at Locked On Leafs. We'll be back with another episode for you on Friday. Until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.